Welcome to week 2 of our Selfless series. We are focusing in on how we can live lives that are selfless. And we're looking at stories of Jesus, because Jesus didn't just do selfless things. He didn't just teach us that we should be selfless. Jesus himself was selfless. And that's why millions of people around the world today and throughout history like and love Jesus, because he is selfless. And even psychologists agree that when we live lives that are selfless, it is better for us. It not only impacts those around us, it impacts our own health and our own well-being. And we're looking at how true humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. And what we're looking at is how we can live lives that are selfless and what selfless living requires. And today we are looking that selfless living requires opening your hands. And I've got two people that are going to come and help me, Elliot and Katie. Why don't we welcome them to the stage? They are going to help me out now. Elliot, I have got a £5 note here. I would like you to put that in your hand and hold it really tightly in a fist. Now, Katie, you are going to try and get the £5 note. If you get it, you can keep the £5 note. Elliot, if she doesn't get it and you can keep hold of it, you can keep the £5 note. Okay? Katie, away you go. Come on, Katie. She's nearly getting it. Come on, Katie. Use your nails. Dig your nails in. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Elliot, you get to keep the £5 note. Well done, unlucky Katie. Why don't we give them a round of applause? See, naturally, when we get something, when we're given something, when we're given a little bit of money, even as teenagers, we can feel like we don't get much money. As teenagers, you don't earn a lot of money. And when we get something, we naturally want to keep tight hold of it. We want to keep it in our hands. We want to keep hold of it and not let go of it because it's ours, it's been given to us, and we don't want to give it away. And what I want us to understand is living selflessly requires us to open our hands. I was hanging out with my cousins a couple of weeks ago, and my cousins have got 2 kids, and one of their kids, Sam, who's about 4 or 5. I might have got that horrifically wrong. I'm not great with kids. But they were telling me about how he has started to really love the Nintendo Wii, and he's obsessed with it and wants to play it all the time, and every Saturday he wants to play it, and actually he's limited to only being able to play it for half an hour on a Saturday. Like, you think your parents stop you playing your console? Like, half an hour. He is only 4 though, so half an hour is like, half of his life essentially. Like, he is desperate and always wants to play Nintendo Wii. And they were talking to me about when they have friends around and some of his friends come to play, he's constantly coming up to them going, can we play Nintendo? Can we play Nintendo? And trying to get extra time. And when he gets extra time and he's got somebody else there, he is always insistent that he is player one. And I get it, because in my house, I'm always player one. When my mates come to play FIFA, I'm player one, not them. I'm the home team, they're the away team, because it's in my house, my rules. And, he was like that as well, and he's gone, I'm going to be player one, I'm player one, I have to be player one. And his mum was telling me that what they're trying to do is help him to live selflessly. So they're teaching him to let somebody else be player one in his house. So when they have friends around, they're teaching him, you need to open your hands and let go of player one and let somebody else be player one and you be player two. At the age of 4, they're teaching their son what it means to live selflessly. And this is what I want us to understand. Living selflessly requires us to open our hands. We've got to loosen our grip on the things that we have, on who we are. We've got to let go of stuff in order to live selflessly. And that's not just if you're a Christian, that's if you're not a Christian as well. There's lots of things like children in need and comic relief that require us, if we are going to live selflessly, to open our hands. And people do that, particularly at this time of year. People engage and give financially. And we're going to look at a story in the Bible that happened with Jesus. And, again, if you are a Christian, you will definitely have heard this story before. If you're not a Christian, I think it's quite likely that you will have heard this story before, because it's a story where Jesus feeds 5,000 people. And in fact, it's not just 5,000 people, because in those days, they only counted the men. Whereas, if it was me and I was in charge, I'd have got someone to count the women and the children as well. So a safe estimate is there's probably around 12,000 people there in this story. It's known as the feeding of the 5,000, but there was probably around 12,000 people. And it says this in John 6. Jesus soon saw a crowd of people coming to look for him. Turning to Philip, he asked, "Where can we buy bread to feed all these people?" He was testing Philip, for he already knew what he was going to do. Philip replied, "Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't have enough money to feed them." Then Andrew, all the best people are called Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes. But what good is that with this huge crowd?" "Tell everyone to sit down," Jesus said. So they all sat down on the grassy slopes. Then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks to God and distributed them to the people. Afterwards, he did the same with the fish, and they all ate as much as they wanted. It's an amazing miracle where Jesus takes these 5 loaves and 2 fishes and multiplies them to feed nearly 12,000 people. And imagine the thought process of that little boy. The little boy who's got his packed lunch, before he went out, his mum probably went, here's some bread rolls and here's 2 fish. Like, imagine if you went to school with that as a packed lunch. Like, that would be grim, opening your lunch in the canteen and being like, just the smell of fish just filling the whole school, like, lunchroom. It'd be disgusting. But this boy here, he's got 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and he's there ready to eat his lunch, and he's thinking, I'm starving, I can't wait for my tuna sandwiches. Like, he's getting excited for them, and then he realizes that something is going on, and not everybody has got food. Now, if that was me and I'm that little boy, I go and hide in a bush and eat my lunch. Like, I go and sneak off and go, there's no way. I've got my lunch. Their mums should have packed them a lunch. Not my mum did. My mum loves me enough to pack me a packed lunch. Why should I care about anyone else? Like, I'd have gone and hid and ate my own lunch. But this boy here, he comes to Jesus and he opens his hands. And not just he opens his hands, he opens his lunchbox and he says, "Can this help?" Now, it wasn't much. It was 7 items to feed 12,000 people. It wasn't much. The little boy didn't have much, but what he had, he was willing to open his hands and say, "Can you use it?" Living selflessly requires us to open our hands, to let go of the little that we have. We might think that we have got little to offer the world, but the little that you can offer can make a difference. You see, he opened his hands and Jesus did an amazing miracle. Now, hands being open is a physical representation of what's going on inside. I'm not just talking about just constantly walking around with open hands like that. That would be weird. But it's a physical representation of an open heart. See, there's a Persian poet that said this. It's going to come up on the screen. It says, "Those with open hearts always have open hands." We have to be open if we are going to be selfless. Selfless living requires us to have open hands. For me, time is a huge deal. I don't have a lot of free time, so when I give somebody time, that's a big deal for me. And in our world that wants to pull us away and distract us, time is a huge thing to give to somebody. Could you be open-handed with your time and help somebody out? Could you be open-handed and give somebody your time? That would be an amazing thing. The festive season is upon us, and we're about to start thinking about what do we want, and what are you going to get for Christmas, and what do we want? Do we want the latest trainers? Do we want the latest iPhone? Do we want the latest PlayStation or Xbox game? What do we want? What if we were open-handed? What if we lived selflessly and opened our hands and said, "Do you know what? Maybe some of that isn't that important to me this year. And maybe we lived selflessly and thought about, what could I do with the stuff that I have got? Maybe it would mean that you open your packed lunch on a lunchtime and you share out some of your lunch. I don't know. I'm not expecting you to go and feed your entire school with just your packed lunch. But you know, Jesus wanted us to understand that in order to live selflessly, we have to be willing to be open-handed. And guys, if we are going to live selfless lives, it requires us to have open hearts and open hands. Let's live lives that are selfless.